to Better with Age. I'm your host, Lauren Lengyel, and with me today I have Joe Whitehurst, who is the president of Integrity Therapy. Joe, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're really glad to have you. So what is it that you do at Integrity Therapy?
We provide physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech-language pathology, nearly exclusively to the aging population, 65 and over.
And how long have you been in the business of restoring folks and physical therapy?
25 years.
So I feel like if you don't know what you're doing by now.
Yeah, I think I got a few things figured out. I can bluff my way through the rest.
So with this population, there's some really important things that we need to look at, especially for family members and for the individual themselves in taking care of themselves. What would you say what some of those things are?
Falls are a number one problem in our aging population now. And there's a lot, the baby boomer thing everybody talks about, there's a lot more people getting old. And so people in 65 and plus, there's some startling statistics that go along with that population as it relates to falls. Well, there's certain things you need to look at. Okay. We all have, I'm certainly at the age where I'm about to be a 65 plus.
Well, I've fallen. I'm not in that category just yet. So, I mean, it's clumsy.
You got a long way to go.
Clumsy central over here.
But the things you need to look at, there's some very simple things. You have, of course, from a clinical aspect, all the medications need to be assessed. And medications such as antidepressants or sedatives, heavy-duty pain killers, all those lead to people with falls. Sometimes those medications can get out of hand and they just need to be looked at by the pharmacist or by the doctor. But the patient themselves and the patient family members has to play a role in that as well. So that first, clinically, the medications need to be looked at. The other reasons it could be involved are lack of exercise, lower body weakness. Many falls are related to the fact that people's lower core and their legs are not very strong. And it has to do with various reasons. And so that leads to a fall. So if you stumble and your legs are weak, then you don't have the ability or the strength to recover from that stumble, then you end up in a fall. If you stub your toe on the edge of a throw rug in the home, or the edge of a curb or a step going into a dwelling, then you don't have the ability to recover from that and prevent the fall, you end up on the floor. And so that's the weakness side of it. So exercises are very important for the aging population. And
so what happens to the muscles as you age?
Well, as you age, some people, not everybody, but some people tend to slow down. Some people consider retirement a rite of passage. Like, I don't have to do anything anymore, I'm retired. But I'm sitting in this chair all day, every day, and everybody brings stuff to me. And that's actually detrimental to an older person.
Right.
Because they went from being a relatively active person, possibly, to a person who does absolutely nothing. And we know from tons of research that muscle fiber itself begins to atrophy after 48 hours of disuse or not being used. And so the same thing happens. If you get the guy or the woman that's very busy and they start sitting down and they don't do very much, those muscles that they had around their bones and their joints and their leg, they begin to shrink. And so they get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And so that's just part of a sedentary lifestyle.
So some of the other things associated with loved ones taking a spill is cost and the family having to step in on that.
Yeah, oftentimes it changes a family. When mom or grandma falls, a lot of things change. It depends on how severe the injuries are. If there's any injuries. Sometimes people fall and there's no injury. And that's a good warning sign that says, okay, she fell once, so we know from statistics that 2 to 3 times more likely to fall again. We might not be as lucky the next time. So they could break something or hit their head, something like that. So the family dynamics are going to change. All of a sudden, mom or grandma that sat at home all day and were okay, they're not okay anymore. So usually it's the wife or the daughter has to start checking on mama or grandma more might interfere with her work. It might interfere with her school or her kid activities, those kind of things. Well, mom needs a lot more attention now because she fell. And so some things can be done to prevent falls. And one thing we didn't cover, one category, is environmental safety. That's a big deal. Most people have significant accumulation of stuff in our country. And a lot of people, the older we get, the less likely we are to let it go. And so we look at cluttered environments, free and open walkways. Throw rugs are called throw rugs for a reason. They throw you. And so especially as we age, mom or grandma or grandpa had this favorite throw rug they've had for 78 years. And it's been right there in that spot for the last 54 years that I lived in this house, and I don't see any reason to move it.
Exactly.
Okay. But the backing on that throw rug is gone. And so all you got to do is put your toe on it and it slides all over the place on the tile or wood floor. That's a problem, because if they're going to step on it, they're going to slip and they're going to fall. A rug on top of carpet is another problem, because you can step on a rug on carpet and then the edge of the rug behind your foot will curl up because you sunk down, and then your next foot comes along and you trip over it.
Right.
So carpet on top of carpet is never a good idea. So an environmental assessment needs to be done, and that's what physical therapists are experts at doing. We assess their environment, look for safety hazards. There should be handrails on both sides of any step. You should be walkways free of clutter. Lighting is a big deal. A lot of older people have the conception that if they turn the light off, they're saving money. And if they use a 20-watt bulb instead of a 60-watt bulb, they're saving money. And they may save 5 cents over a 12-month period by doing that, but it causes a lot of problems. So they need good lighting, and part of that is because older people tend to have vision issues. And so as your vision declines, you need a brighter light to be able to see hazards before they become a hazard. But that's a kind of another category of what you should be looking at.
And so we're looking at that, we're looking at the environment, and then groups like yours can come in and offer a physical therapy. And I'm assuming that is some type of exercise program to get them active and moving again.
The typical PT visit, which would be ordered by your doctor for a Medicare to pay for it, the typical visit would be that we come in, we do a physical assessment, we look at the medications, we look at the individual for any kind of medical conditions they have, then we look at the environment, and then we write up a report to make recommendations for all of those things. You need to remove these safety hazards, begin this exercise program. The difference between a PT or a physical therapist coming out and designing an exercise program has to do with the full consideration of all their medical infirmities. And so I would not design an exercise program for an 88-year-old female who weighs, say, 110 pounds with a history of osteoarthritis or possibly a knee or shoulder replacement that you would do, okay? So it'd be different for her, and that's why I need somebody with medical training as a physical therapist, occupational therapist, to look at that person and decide, well, how can we make them better without making them worse? And that's where you need an expert that's educated, well educated in that point. And I don't know if you know or not, physical therapists now are required to have a doctorate degree to practice therapy.
Wow. So, well, there you have it. That's all the time we have for this segment. Joe, thank you so much for being with us and sharing those helpful facts with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We'll be right back after this message with an interview with Dr. Lamm.
When I was 6, my days were spent playing basketball. When I was 6, my dream was to make it to the NBA. When I was 6, my mom had a stroke.
I'm Paul George, and I want you to spot a stroke fast.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911.
Protect the ones you love.
Spot a stroke fast.
I'm here with Dr. Rosmarie Lamm, Executive Director for Rath Senior Connections and Education Center. And we're discussing a little bit about the center and what is done there and a little bit about Dr. Lamm. So, Dr. Lamm, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Lauren. It's a pleasure to be here today.
All right, so I just want to get into your history really quickly, and kind of tell me what led you to this point. Are you a Florida native? Is there something maybe with your family that really made you want to get into caring for others?
Well, in reality, the story started back in 1957 when I entered school to study nursing, and as a young girl of 18, and totally immersed myself in health, in healthcare and health teaching, and was married 4 years later to my husband of now 56 years. And
congratulations.
he is a surgeon, and our life has been ensconced in medicine and healthcare and community. And that really started the adventure. Moving then on to career changes, 4 children later, and continuing my education as a nurse practitioner and also as a PhD in medical anthropology, and which sounds strange.
I just feel so unqualified to speak with you right now.
No, Lauren, no. In essence, it combines anthropology, the study of people, with health, and how exciting. Nothing is more exciting in my mind's eye.
Very cool.
So as we move forward, and I taught at Florida Southern College for 16 years, starting the nursing program with a colleague there, and then when I finished my PhD, I moved on to the University of South Florida. And there I taught people in the social sciences, psychology, social work, sociology, etc., and anthropology. So with that, I obtained several grants. And the grants led me to develop a program where we could introduce senior adults. And I'm I forgot to tell you, I have a master's in gerontology. As well as nurse practitioner.
I need to get you to write all those down.
So I said, well, we really need to get this health initiative and out to the senior community, but it also has to be oriented toward anthro, the study of humans and what their needs are in our greater community. Back when I started and wrote my grants, I think we were at 19 or 20%. And yet the seniors were getting very little attention. And of course, needs of children were paramount here. And that's very, very important. Intergenerational is the word. But our seniors were not getting that attention. And so we wrote grants. I got a grant for the University of South Florida, Lakeland, from the Retirement Foundation of Chicago, which was a significant grant, and a grant from the state of Florida, and also from the Bartow Community Healthcare Foundation. And we were able to get a building use in Bartow, but under the auspices of the University of South Florida, and put all the grants together, and we started the Rath Senior Connections and Education Center. So moving forward, when the University of South Florida left the community, pulled out, and the Polytechnic was then in the development phase, I said to our board, at that point we had a board, and I said, we really need to consider incorporation as a nonprofit, 501c3. And so we did, and that was when the university moved away in 2012, and I had to find a home for us. Leaving the university, I retired. I was 73. And carrying again my interest in community, health, and aging, and all of those cultural variations, I said, where can we live? So I came here to Lakeland Volunteers in Medicine, Family Fundamentals, and I met with the wonderful people here. And they said, come on aboard. We can't give you the luxury that you had at the university, but here's your office.
And there's a coffee maker here, so that's just all you need.
That's all we need. The people at Lakeland Volunteers in Medicine which is separate from family fundamentals, both groups are just the most fabulous people you could ever encounter. It was like going back to the 1950s when I was a student, welcoming, interested in people, etc. So we moved into this little cubby downstairs and carried on our work, which is to connect seniors with programs in the community to be of help to them. So we had a retired senior volunteer program, which is a sister to the Polk County and lives there, and they started sending us wonderful people like Charlie Burdett.
Oh, Charlie's a great guy.
And so we move forward in the development, continuing our senior scholars classes. We have classes every fall and every spring, following the college mandate of education.
Okay.
We have usually 7 to 10 classes: beginning computers, intermediate computers, social networking, which we're offering this fall in September through to Thanksgiving. We have fitness for seniors. We partner with the YMCA North. We also offer a Matter of Balance, which is a program which helps people who are having balance difficulties, sponsored by the Area Agency on Aging. We offer classes in 100 Years of Broadway, Spanish classes.
I want to come take the Broadway class. That
Oh,
sounds
it's so
like
much
a blast.
fun. And Floyd Love, who worked on Broadway, brings that to our community. He partners with us. We have health and other health and wellness programs. So we have this whole group of classes. Some are free,
Right.
offered by other agencies in our community, like the Area Agency on Aging and the Y. But some are basic computer classes, our Spanish classes, our healthy cooking class. All of those are a basic $45 fee for 6 weeks of education.
Where are they offered? Where's
Right here in Family Fundamentals.
Oh, really? There's access to computers and everything?
Access to the computers. We have computer classroom right here.
Fabulous.
And our teacher is a former student of mine, Kim Skinner, and Emily Wilds had taught it as well, 2 former students of ours from the University of South Florida. So it's one big family.
So you've given us this incredibly impressive resume, 73 years of dutiful work, and you're still kicking.
Yeah.
What do you think about that with all of the things that you're still doing post-retirement? You know, you're supposed to go on permanent vacation after
No.
you retire.
Certainly not. My husband and I are both extremely active, and because, number one, we have good health. That is always a blessing that you can't always count on. But the number one issue is that health, wellness, community have been a part of my life, as I said, since 1957. And probably before then, because my family was very community oriented. And so I bring that to when I retired at age 73, I had a purpose. We had formed all of these coalitions. They lived. And so for the past 4 years, because I am now 77, I said, well, let's bring this model into the community. Let's form this nonprofit. And so because of all these wonderful volunteers, I have been able to create leadership. Is how I look at my role, is creating leadership to keep this moving forward. The other aspect that I am so involved in teaching people is collaboration, not competition. We're not competing. We are collaborating. There are enough resources to share. There are enough people in need. There's enough information to get out there to make this community healthier and happier and increase the quality of life. And also to do intergenerational work, which is so important as we educate your generation and younger. So that's what keeps me involved and busy. And I do take vacations, and I do go away. We just returned from several weeks in North Carolina.
What do you think has been the most, I guess, vital piece of you, I mean, maintaining your youth, really, up until this point? I mean, you're very youthful.
Probably genes, excellent genes. Had a father that lived to 87 and a mom to 95 and a half.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
That's right. And then secondly would be leading a life of purpose, and looking at the whole community that you are part of, whatever brings you to that community.
Well, Dr. Lamm, thank you so much for being with us today. Everything that you're doing for the community, everything you've done for the community, thank you so much, and I look forward to see what you're yet to do.
Thank you so much on behalf of the Rath Senior Connections and Education Center.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Welcome back to Better with Age. I'm your host, Lauren Lengyel. With me, we have Jason Pendrod, who is an attorney in elder law. He's going to share some information with us about, I guess, what we need to know as we're getting older. Jason, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Lauren, it's a pleasure to be here.
I hear that you have a practice in Lake Wales. Is that?
I do. I have actually 3 offices, one in Lake Wales, one in Sebring, and one in Lakeland.
So what would be one of the first steps? Like, what would you say to someone? So, for example, for me, I've got parents that are getting on into their 70s. I mean, they're getting around great, but like you said, I don't want to wait till the last minute to have to scramble and figure out, wishes and wills and things like that.
Sure. So, basically every adult should have certain documents, no matter really what age we are. And so, those key documents typically will reflect what do we want to happen if we were incapacitated, something happened to us, we were unconscious, for God forbid, who can make decisions for us? And so those key documents are things like a healthcare surrogate, which is a way to name somebody in advance that would make medical decisions for you if you weren't able to talk to the doctor yourself because you were sick or whatever the circumstance was. It's also important to have a document called a living will, which will discuss what you want to happen when you get towards end of life situations. So whatever your belief system is, it's good to have that in writing. As far as financial affairs, a key document is having a power of attorney. And of course that's not one document fits all. It's or not a one-size-fits-all type document, because it's the devil's in the details. So you really want to have a power of attorney that's catered to what you really need. So for instance, if you're worried about somehow protecting your assets when maybe you might have Alzheimer's, you really want to make sure there's very expansive language for the people that you're naming to be your agent in that document. The tricky part is a power of attorney is a license to steal.
Oh, yeah.
And so you must pick someone you trust completely. I joke around with people a little bit, but I'm serious. If you say your son, Jimmy, you trust him 50% of the time, he's not someone to name as your power of attorney. And those documents are key to avoiding something we call guardianship, which is where someone is before the court and going to be adjudicated incompetent and have rights taken away. So by having power of attorney, a healthcare surrogate, documents like that in place, you can avoid having to go through that proceeding.
And other than contacting an attorney or a law office, what is the best way to get forms like that?
Sure. Well, there's a statutory healthcare surrogate, so you can actually go to the Florida statutes and find a surrogate form. My experience is typically those statutory forms are just not potent enough. there's a difference between a document being legal and a document being practically used the way it should be. And so, for instance, my healthcare surrogate document is 6 pages. Now, some people might say that's overkill, but when you're in a crisis and you're dealing with doctors and nurses you've never met, you know, it's nice to have a document where we can point right to the provision and say, no, I have the authority to make that decision.
Definitely. It takes the guesswork out and really probably relieves some guilt or some, you know, some weird battle that's going on. You know, I don't want to let them down, but want to do what's best for them. And
You're absolutely right. It's one of those situations where you can promote family harmony and try to take away the possibility of disputes. I talk to clients often. I say there's head decisions and there's heart decisions. And when you're picking a surrogate or you're picking a power of attorney, it really should be a head decision. You don't want to be guilted into the decision. But you know, I sit in the middle sometimes between parents and the children, and the parents often don't want to talk about these things because they don't want their kids to feel sad that they're not going to be there someday, so they feel a little awkward. And the kids want to have the conversation, but they don't want their parents thinking that they want to kill them off or they're already thinking about them being gone.
Right?
And so, you know, sometimes that's my role, is to kind of get them to talk because they really want to have the conversation. I call them necessary conversations. And it's, you know, everybody's different. You know, there are some very private people, and so having those conversations are more difficult. Like I said, from seeing both sides of the issue, typically they really want to have some resolution. It's just how to approach it can be awkward.
Definitely. You mentioned with assets and wills and finances that if things aren't done correctly, you might still wind up in a probate situation.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And what that means? Because I was a little fuzzy on it before.
Yes, definitely. So probate is the process in Florida of transferring assets from a decedent to their rightful heirs. And so when we often think of who we're leaving our assets to, we think of a last will and testament. In movies, you often see the reading of the will, and the whole family is there after someone's passed away. And the issue is that a lot of people think by having a last will and testament that they avoid probate just by having that document. And it might be because it's a very personal document. It says, you know, I leave everything to my spouse, or I leave everything to my children in equal shares, whatever it is. But the key concept on whether someone goes through probate or not is how their assets are titled or registered. So for instance, if I have a bank account and it's just in my name, even though my will says everything goes to my wife and I pass away, she doesn't get to just show up at the bank with a copy of my will. She has to hire a Florida attorney to basically represent, make sure creditors are paid, go through a process, make sure there's no other wives, like if I was in Utah or something like that.
Right.
And before those assets are distributed. So it's one of those situations where probate avoidance is a little bit of strategy, and it's not a one-size-fits-all type approach. There's different ways of avoiding probate. A lot of people will use a revocable living trust and have their assets titled in the name of the trust. There's other ways of avoiding probate, like naming beneficiaries as payable on death, beneficiaries on your bank accounts or on life insurance. The issue can be, you know, how many heirs do you have? Do you want all 6 kids owning the house after you pass away? And will they all get along? Or maybe you want to use a trust. Do you have any beneficiaries that are maybe in a marriage that's got difficulties, or they're going through creditor issues, or maybe one of them is sick and might need Medicaid someday, and so you don't want to leave assets to them and kick them off any kind of health insurance that they're receiving or benefits. So you kind of look at your beneficiaries to figure out what's the best way to leave assets to them.
We're running out of time, but what would you say is the best place for people to go and get more information about what they need? I mean, obviously you've been very helpful, but where can they go and do some research before they make that next step to reach out to an attorney?
Sure. I think the internet is a good source of information, not necessarily to go and, you know, perform surgery yourself or go draft your own documents,
Right.
but to get a good flavor for what you're looking for. Elder law really has some kind of focus on long-term care. So how do we pay for that care? How could we advise people? And so, you know, as you're going through information, you want to see that there's some kind of focus on that.
Thank you so much for being here.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me on Better with Age. I'm your host, Lauren Lengyel.